prepared. And this metaphysical group, I want you guys to really get used to helping each other, remind each other to be excellent at being prepared. Because I wasn't. I just took off for Chicago in a car, just 8 hours away. Just take off and go, like I did with you, Bill. Just take off from Memphis, And you just really need to make sure you're prepared, and psychically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, for sure. But I had a really good time, and there's a connection.
I was in the Boy Scouts I was growing up, and that was our motto: be prepared.
Be prepared.
Well, especially in your role as a supernatural metaphysician, the more you practice and the more you make a connection with your higher self, the better off you're going to be. So be consciously aware that you are a practitioner, and that the more you are given, the more is expected. So please remember that and believe. Live it. It and be an example to others as a metaphysician, that you are auditory and specifically sound. Tonight was one of our lessons. You never know what kind of lesson you're going to get by showing up here with us, and what part you're going to play. Now, Sherry, if you could show up with your memory of particular positive feelings, and your Reiki energy would be very good to be an anchor, and instantly experiencing, hopefully, positive connection and communication. Have you ever been an anchor or been a practitioner for a group, a metaphysical group, Sherry?
No, I haven't, and this is really interesting sounding. And I'm looking at your website here, trying to get a grasp of how large the group is, and it seems very interesting.
It's an interesting group. Well, now we also have GoSoulFirst.us, but we're real scattered, and I've got the Alien Contact Organization and GoSoulFirst.us with Bill's artwork on it. So I've gone from 75 to 100 websites down to only like 10 to 12. And so I'm trying to handle the entire world for the entire ACE Metaphysical Institute, and we're also federally have the name ACE Folklife for those that are archivists and producers of records and videos in the United States of America and the world, but mostly through the Smithsonian. And then we have Ascension Center organization for raising consciousness, and Sundays Ascension Center, and we've just added the word church in 2015, which is for the people, by the people, and the spiritual energy, which I was really non-political and non-religious, but we are a spiritual, metaphysical group. And it felt weird that I would even add that word, but it got to be where I had so many people connected to me, and having the laying on of hands in the Golden Pyramid, and I was called by God, your higher power, your source, God, that whoever, each person has their own God, believe it or not, as to how you have the masters. But we say the masters, Buddha, Krishna, Jesus, all those in esoterics, all the masters of walk the earth, but mine was here in America. And I always chose Jesus as my master, but angels, gods, but I was monotheistic, thinking there was only one. But I have universally, we say live and let live. So we're open-minded. You can use any that you want to, folks. You can follow any role, any whatever works for you. I don't know how to say it. Bill, you want to address that universally? How do we say that?
Sorry, what? Sorry about that.
Using your God source and your higher source. Universally speaking, with our group, it's whatever works, but we have a universally speaking. How do you say we're non-denominational, but we're really metaphysicians that universally we're all self-improving, but we're self-help, we're independents, we're contractors, consultants, agents, organizers. It's like being volunteers, folks, and we just all come together. Like a convention. If you're a speaker, you get chosen to speak, or you may be author, you may go in the vending room, you may go in the artist. But once a year, we're going to come together and hopefully meet each other, and then we vote on officers. But right now, I just posted them. So we have articles and bylaws. Let me go. Let's see. It just depends on what you're looking for. But go ahead, Bill, for the universally speaking for everybody.
Well, yeah, universal is a good word in this context. That's what we are, really. We're universalist in that sense that we draw from the entire universe, not just from one school of thought or not just one religion, but we draw from all of them. We look at all of them because, it's my sincere belief that, there is no single people who you could call the chosen people, any more than that we are all chosen. So in that sense, I believe we're all chosen, and therefore God, it's capable or possible for God to communicate to each and every one of us in your own personal way. And so bearing that concept in mind, I believe that that inspiration is available to anyone and everyone. It's just a matter of whether or not you take the time to listen. There's a scripture that talks about that, that idea of being still and listening for what that still small voice. Unlike Walter, you're not loud. It's not loud at all. That still small voice is you can so easily not hear it if you're not listening. If you're too much into your own noise you're making, you're never going to hear it. So you got to stop and be still and quiet. Just listen. And then that still small voice will begin to reach into your heart and begin to touch you. And and it doesn't matter what religious background you come from, because that we're all children of God. And so that same God is going to touch each and every one of our hearts if we just take that time to stop, be still, and listen. Not long ago, I actually wrote a poem about that, and I was, actually, I guess I should say it was actually several years ago when I originally wrote it, but I was just kind of playing around the other night, digging through my computer, I knew I had written a lot of material before that I could kind of work from and kind of add to the writing that I'm doing recently. As TJ mentioned earlier, I've been working on this book, The Open Walk. Well, now while we're in the editing process with The Open Walk, and that can sometimes take a long time, the editing process. I had this thing ready in April, actually in March, come to think of it, well, near the end of March. But so far as getting the edit finished, that's taking a while. So but hopefully it won't be much longer. So in the meantime, while I've been waiting on being able to get this book out, I've been working on additional material to go along with it. At first I thought it would be like a workbook that would maybe go along with this book, but now it's just grown to the point where I think it's going to be a series of workbooks. So not just one. I don't know how many yet, but as the Spirit moves me and I write more and more materials, I'm sure I will eventually get to the point where I'll be starting putting these workbooks out too. So it's a lot of material about spirituality, and I really do believe that we live in an age right now where this is not necessarily a familiar term, syncretism. Those who've heard of it will know what I'm talking about. But in case you don't know, syncretism is simply put where you're looking at all these different schools of thought and different religions and different philosophies and even different theories in science, and you find the ways that these things kind of dovetail with one another. So you can take a concept like karma from the East, and then you take a concept from Western philosophy, or at least from Western traditions of Christianity, this idea they call that which you sow, so shall you reap. It's basically the same idea, karma and this sowing and reaping, and also what scientists call cause and effect or causality. All of that's describing the same thing, but with different words and from different cultures. But it is essentially describing the same thing. So when you find that way of blending the different ideas from all these different philosophies, of saying, okay, this is the same idea, but now here's another idea that's totally different, but it doesn't contradict necessarily this other idea than this other religion over here, so maybe they can kind of be blended together, and ultimately we see throughout history this has been done over and over and over again, different wisdom teachers finding the ways of blending these various ideas from different schools of thought and bringing it together in this kind of synchronizing it in a way. That's what syncretism is bringing it together and finding the blend. And it doesn't mean that you can necessarily mix every concept from every religion together, because some of them are mutually exclusive. Some of them really are contradictory. But so what you do is you look for the commonalities. You look for the common points, and then you go from there. And you find also the things that it's like, okay, our spiritual realm, the reality that we all live in, whatever it is extremely complex. It's not a thing that just you can figure out overnight. It takes a while. So since it is sort of complex, it seems to me that some people, you might say, have kind of specialized in one area, while others have specialized in some other area in terms of what these different wisdom teachers have taught us in the past. So you can find kernels of truth in all the religions of the world, and you can also find falsehood in all the religions of the world. They're all mixed together, and our challenge is to somehow be able to sort it all out and figure out which is which, and get a hold of those little kernels of truth from all these different belief systems, and bring it together in some sort of synchronized way. And so that's why I'm all about this whole syncretism concept, because that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what I'm trying to do with all the stuff that I'm writing, is to figure out at least a way of looking at this. And when I say a way of looking at this, I'm saying that it's not just the way, and that's part of the mistake a lot of people make, is when you're trying to find the way, as if to suggest that it's the only way, but there isn't just one way that is the only way. Instead, all these different paths. Okay, imagine that our goal is the peak of a mountain, and I'm on the west side, TJ's on the east side, and somebody else is over here on the north, and maybe Sherry's on the south. But are we going to take the same path to get up to the top of that mountain? No, we're going to each take different paths, aren't we? Each of us will take our own path, but where do those paths lead? They all lead to the same place, ultimately, the top of that mountain. So that's the challenge, is to find the ways to see how this culture over here had this path, this other culture had this way of doing it, another one had another way of doing it, and we can kind of look at all these different ways, and each of us find our own way. And part of the concept that I'm dealing with in these books that I'm writing now is a new terminology with syncretism. I'm calling it personalized syncretism. The idea being that each and every one of us have our own individual way, our own individual personalized way of bringing it all together into our minds.
I got to interrupt you, Bill. We're fixing to reach the end of the show, folks. For those of y'all that want to understand what we're doing here, we're just coming back online, getting ready to do this weekly, and we want to invite everybody. And we've only got 60 seconds, but sometimes we go over when we're talking, just so you know. And then it's recorded here if you want to come back. But we'll be helping you weekly. We want you to come and be a part. Feel like you're going to learn something every week. And I'll go through some classes that normally they're about $1,000 to $2,000 with most of the companies. and we're trying to bring them down where they're a lot cheaper for you, and I just sort of cover some of the basics, but not here. They're not that much